your phone right quick? Hello, operator? Yes, Mindy, if she has a code. It should work now. She should be on it. No, I'm not going to mute till you mute, sister. You muted your phone? You muted? Yeah, okay. Okay. You said he fixed the laptop? Oh, okay, cool. Hello, operator?
Hello, this is Yasi.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, perfect.
we are about to start the meeting right now.
Okay, perfect. I am going to open up the lines.
Ready? Okay. We're going to go and continue our meeting. And we've already done our roll call, so we're looking at communications from staff.
Yes, Chairman. On behalf of the Economic and Community Development Department, our Director, Chris Jackson, and myself, we look forward to inviting you to the Planning Commission luncheon to be held December 14th at Hollywood Park with a visit to Intuit Dome. Next item, Hollywood Park Retail, correct. Next, we received a correspondence item on 7A, a request from the applicant to postpone their item. As this is not a public hearing, it does not need to be postponed to a date certain. And on 7B, we would like to clarify that on the first page of the staff report, the number of conditions says 3, it's actually 4 conditions in the resolution. That concludes staff's comments.
Thank you. Public comments regarding agenda items. Person wishing to address the Planning Commission on any items on the agenda other than a public hearing may do so at this time. Operator, can you open up the phone lines?
If you wish to make a comment, please press pound 2. Please press pound 2 to get unmuted for your comment. There are no comments at this time.
Thank you. We're going to close this segment. I need to get an approval on the minutes for November 2nd, 2022.
I move that we approve the minutes for November 2nd, 2022.
I second.
Okay. It's been properly moved in second. We're going to call for any questions. Hearing none, we'll call for a vote.
Commissioner Patrick,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice, Commissioner Trejo,
Abstain.
Commissioner Shaw Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner, Chairman Springs.
Aye. Public hearing, a public hearing to consider, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, I was taking over your job.
That's okay. It's all right.
I can do that now if you want.
A public hearing to consider General Plan Amendment 2022-002, GPA 2022-002 to update the safety element of the Inglewood General Plan.
Chairman Springs and Commission, the file is present and notice has been given in the form and manner as required by law. Staff received no correspondence from the public on this item, and Senior Planner Bernard McCrumbie is present to do a short staff presentation.
Members of the commission. The Inglewood General Plan consists of 8 elements. Among those are the land use, housing, noise, circulation, conservation, open space, the recently adopted environmental justice, and of course, the safety element. The safety element was originally adopted in 1974 and was last comprehensively updated in 1995. The intent of the safety element is to discuss specific hazards that with a high likelihood of occurrence or high impact of severity that would potentially affect the city of Inglewood. The safety element, as proposed and drafted, integrates goals, policies, and implementation actions related to the safety throughout the community. As a part of the update of the city's hazard mitigation plan and safety element, a number of outreach pop-up events were held throughout all 4 districts here in the city, as well as public surveys and stakeholder outreach. In updating the safety element, the city is ensuring that the local hazard mitigation plan, which is a state requirement, and the safety element are working in concert to meet state mandated requirements, as well as ensuring the City of Inglewood residents are adequately protected. The key elements that were focused on in the safety element were public safety and emergency response, natural hazards, providing a safe environment, and of course the goals, policies, and actions. Based on staff's analysis of the safety topic areas, as well as community input, the following goals and policies were developed. Each goal included policy as well as implementation measures to ensure that all goals and policies outlined are met. The first of which is to minimize the risk of life, property, infrastructure, and social and economic disruption from all natural hazards that pose an unreasonable risk to the community. The second goal is to minimize the risk to life, property, infrastructure, and social and economic disruption from earthquake and other geological hazards. The third is to minimize the risk of life, property, infrastructure, and social and economic disruption from drought, climate change, extreme heat, and heavy rain. And the last is just creating and maintaining a safe environment. As stated earlier, the safety element integrates implementation actions that are all listed in the copy of the element that we provided in your Planning Commission packets that ensure that the proposed goals for the element are met. The proposed general plan amendment is consistent with the Inglewood General Plan and is exempt from CEQA, and a notice of exemption has been prepared stating such. This concludes staff's presentation. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. The city's consultant with planning, dynamic planning and science is also available should you have any questions for them.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to open it up for questioning to you. We're going to start with Commissioner Patrick.
I will reserve my questions until later, until we can talk to the consultant. Thank you.
Commissioner Rice,
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Trio,
Is the booklet that was provided as a part of the package, the draft Inglewood General Plan Safety Element, if approved by the commission and then by the city council, is this what would go to, is it the state for, as the safety element?
Yes, that document would be sent to the state for their approval once adopted.
Okay. And the reason I ask is, do they require specifics on some of the implementation? I mean, just to pick one out, update for policy S1.1 implementation, S1.1.1 that says update the hazard mitigation plan regularly. Would they require like quarterly, biannually, annually? Because that's, to me, is a general statement. And I mean, if that's something that the state is okay with, then it answers my question.
Yes, so typically the hazard, local hazard mitigation plan and the safety element, the state requires that when the local hazard mitigation plan is updated, that the safety element be updated as well. And so that's something that happens, believe it's every 10 years, don't quote me on that, but it is a regularly recurring update to meet state guidelines and changes to the environment.
Okay, so some of the other general comments that are a part of the plan, I take it then that they meet whatever state requirements.
That's correct. And both the local hazard mitigation plan and the safety element both would require state approval. They have been submitted to the state for their review and comment as well.
Okay, so some of this is standard wording, like when you say, develop a program to train repair personnel at the Emergency Operations Center. You're not required to provide a specific program and how you're going to train the repair personnel?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Shaw Williams.
I have no questions.
Yes, I have a question. I'm reading the information and updating the safety elements for the city to ensure the local hazards mitigation plans and safety elements are working. My question in regards to that, I see a list of items, but you only touched on a few of the items, and some of these that I see providing a safe environment for urban fire risk, and then I see air traffic hazards. So can you explain to me and our commissioners what we're talking about when we say urban fire risk? Are we talking about in a fire zone? And are we talking about the air traffic hazards? Are we talking about low aircraft? Can you explain that to us, what we're talking about there?
Yeah, so each one of these sections provide a detailed analysis of how what the plan is to respond to these different types of potential hazards. For example, emergency services basically provides a list of all of our local LA County Fire Department stations located within the city of Inglewood, provides regional emergency hospital services within the Los Angeles County area. To touch on earthquake and geologic hazards, discusses kind of the fault lines that run through the city of Inglewood, talks about providing programming through the policies and implementation strategies that would help to mitigate soft structures, buildings, seismic retrofitting and different things like that. Also, when you speak about urban fire risk, air traffic hazard, so there's because we're in the flight path, portions of the city of Inglewood is in the flight path, there's a kind of a map that maps out like potential accident, flight, plane crash, hazards and things of that nature. And so all those things are itemized throughout are mentioned throughout the safety element and how those things would be mitigated should such disasters take place here in the city.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I just want to add too, because one of the obvious things, and I think we all thinking the same thing with regard to fires. We're not in a fire hazard, but the impact of fires affect us. And I think it's on page 1-34, it talks about air quality, which is one of the things that, we need to have policies regarding when we do have major fires, which we have, and the air currents drive those smoke plumes towards us, how we respond to that. And as you know, if having little kids on playgrounds and things, having policies in place to deal with that situation is critical to addressing some of the concerns within our local community.
Thank you for that. I just want to add on to that. Are the unified school districts, they aware of this particular, and are their staff trained for these earthquake situations that we may have and fire risks, airplane crashes, things of this nature? Are they trained? Are they up to speed on how to respond, things of that nature?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
So the safety element is a document that's put forth by the city. Typically, the school districts have their own standards and guidelines that they use to train their staff for emergency services and operations. This element is to guide the city's response to emergency should they happen. And part of the development of both the hazard mitigation plan and the safety element was the development of our Office of Emergency Services and our emergency operations room or system that we have located in our sub-basement here at City Hall, where we can come together and respond to such emergencies should they take place.
Yeah, and I'll add that, these documents are transmitted to the school district. And I agree 100% with what Senior Planner McCrumbie is saying. They have their own standards, but we collaborate with each other. We share information. So the school district will certainly get a copy of our plan once it's adopted, and they'll have it as part of their resources to deal with some of the issues that you're referring to. But specifically, I do know that there are specific training requirements, particularly in the schools, for emergency type situations with regard to airplanes, emergency situations. As you know, there's a lot of unfortunate incidents happening with schools across the country. So they're prepared to deal with those issues, and that's probably at the highest level of concern.
Are there exercises conducted throughout the city?
Yes, there are.
I have no further questions. Thank you. Who am I going to talk to next? The consultant. Yes, is the consultant available? If so, can you kind of give us your feed on this particular project?
Your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Rainey Ott with Dynamic Planning Plus Science. Ethan Mobley is also on the line and might be able to answer some of these questions. But the safety element is a part of a 20-year plan as part of your general plan. And so it is a little bit more high level, but it incorporates the hazard mitigation plan by reference, which includes much more detailed information about some of these hazards.
Okay, we have some general questions for you. If you can just stand by, we're going to have our commissioners ask you some various questions in regards to this particular project. So we're going to start off with Commissioner Patrick.
Good afternoon, or evening, I'm sorry. Usually safety elements, they discourage building on earthquake faults. considering SoFi and our new to be completed Intuit Dome, were there any safety measures or specific plans regarding those two venues? Are there any specific safety measures that were taken that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. Can you hear me? This is Ethan Mobley, the owner of Dynamic Planning Plus Science.
Can you give us your name one more time, please?
This is Ethan Mobley. I'm the owner of Dynamic Planning Plus Science.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. There, in the safety element and in the hazard mitigation plan, there is a reference to the Loma Prieta earthquake zones of required investigation. And I don't know if you've read that section or seen those maps, but anytime those zones are identified in a city or in a region, there must be further studies done before a building is constructed. And those studies include geologic survey to make sure that the soils can withstand a certain shake intensity identified by the USGS. And so you're allowed to build within the Loma Prieta zones according to California state law, but you have to design your building accordingly to withstand severe shake or whatever kind of shake zone the city is within or the USGS determines in that area. And the building standards depend upon what kind of building it is, whether it's a public safety building or a public gathering facility or a single-family residential building. They all have different standards that they have to be constructed to. And it's certainly in state law to protect the citizens of Inglewood within those structures, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. You've answered it. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Rice?
Hi, how are you? Just had a question with reference to hazardous waste and urban fire risks. I'm just a bit concerned because we have a fire training center here in the city, and they burn during the daytime. I mean, during school hours and with our schools and children downwind. And I was trying to determine what type of evaluation. During your evaluation, how did you look at this?
We didn't look at individual sites such as the training center. We do look at different components. We didn't look at the air quality hazards regarding single sites. However, we did look at single sites for areas that are holding hazardous materials, which are they're confined to certain spaces and they're allowed to hold those materials. And so we identified those across the city, but we didn't identify individual burn points for contaminants or like like a plume, so a smoke plume. We didn't identify individual locations because it's a 20-year plan, so it's a general plan in nature. We can look at that at a later date if you like, or the city could look at that at a later date to see what kind of pollution plumes come from that burn location.
Yes, I think that's very important because Long Beach and El Monte, they both took looks at that and they closed down their live burn centers. And I think Inglewood's the closest live burn center for everyone to train in because now Santa Monica and El Segundo, and they're all here training in Inglewood. And the nearest one from here is in Tehachapi. And I'm just wondering, during our 20-year plan, how much longer are we going to allow that to continue to happen here in Inglewood?
Sure, there should have been. I would encourage you to look at the CEQA documents when that building was constructed to see the evaluation that was conducted under the air quality section of the CEQA documents. I don't know how long ago it was constructed, if it was, but CEQA requirements before you get a building approved or a large construction project approved, you'd have to go through CEQA, which is a California Environmental Quality Act, where you would have to evaluate the impacts from that facility. So I don't know how long ago it was constructed, Bernard, but might be nice to look at the checklist from CEQA to see if it evaluated air quality issues.
Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Trio?
Yes, can you provide kind of a general picture of a secondary backup emergency communications center? I'm looking at page 141-47, where it says that to meet goal S1, one of the implementation measures is to develop a secondary backup emergency communications center and protocol in the event that primary communication systems are not operable. Can you provide a scenario on something like that? I mean, is the recommendation to have a secondary site or build one from scratch, or can you just provide more info on that?
Yeah, it's always a good practice for emergency operations to have redundant power, redundant communications. And I believe that we noticed, or during the assembly of the policies and goals and implementation measures, that we did need a secondary redundant site in case one site goes down. During earthquake, especially, you might lose power, and you need redundant power at these sites to make sure that you still have communications if it's a joint communication center for, say, fire, police, ambulance services. If they do need redundant power at a different location in case one location goes down. But it's best practice in emergency management to have redundant operations.
Well, I understand the need for it, but I guess I'm trying to figure out if you develop something before a major event takes place or after a major event takes place, there's the need that, we should have had a secondary backup emergency communications. I'm trying to figure out when this takes place.
So it's something that over a 20-year period, if you want to attack some of these implementation measures one at a time, it's always good to make sure that if there is a grant opportunity out there, say from the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program or emergency management grants, that you can point to your general plan and says, see, it says it in our general plan. See, it says it in our hazard mitigation plan that we need to have a redundant site, even though that you may not have complete construction plans for it. But it's always nice to make sure that you can obtain that second site through grant funding or other means if you do want to do that in the future. So it's a mitigation action, so to speak, to make sure that before an event occurs, that you're not scrambling for a secondary site or trying to put in a temporary communication, say, trailer that is patched together last minute and doesn't function as needed and is not tested before earthquake occurs or some kind of other event occurs.
Okay, I get it. So if it's in the general plan and funding comes up, we can try to obtain some of that funding because it's in our general plan that's been approved and adopted by the city and said, as you said, look, it's in our general plan, this funding is available, we want to apply for it. And because it's in our general plan, more than likely, we have a better chance of obtaining that funding. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's already documented, so you have consistency amongst your general plan and your hazard mitigation plan. That's one of the reasons why the city hired us. We could do both plans to make sure that they're pointing in the right direction at the same time. So they serve two purposes. One, the hazard mitigation plan is really a grant enabling plan, and then at the same time, the safety element is pointing to that hazard mitigation plan. So they're cross referencing each other to make sure that we're consistent, and that's important.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Shaw Williams?
Hi, good evening. I'm happy to know where the disaster and evacuation routes are in the city of Inglewood because I'm privileged to be able to review this. However, I'm concerned, will the residents following approval or shortly thereafter, will they also be given this information in knowing where the disaster and evacuation routes are located?
Yeah, that's the next step of this plan, is really activating this plan, so to speak. The evacuations, are actually the disaster routes, are developed by LA County Public Works, and they're infiltrated down to the cities. So because it's such a large geographic area, and there's all kinds of different routes, say from Caltrans to local city streets. LA Public Works put together those disaster routes. And the next steps is to really communicate about those disaster routes ahead of time. However, we want to make sure that we communicate them properly, and that's the job of the OES, and making sure that depending upon where there's a disaster or where there's a fire, are we going to shelter in place? Are we going to evacuate? And that really has to come from clear communication from OES. And so we try to illustrate the disaster routes, but the operation of those disaster routes are really dependent upon the disaster and the emergency operators out there across the city and the county.
Okay, thank you.
My question, I'd like to piggyback on Commissioner Shaw Williams. I'm not really sure, or I don't understand how would the residents become aware of the evacuation portion? Would it be the responsibilities of the city council members and its staff, or who would be responsible for to advising the residents of these particular evacuations and things of this nature?
Chairman, so the Office of Emergency Services, which is a department here held at City Hall, would be responsible for providing the information to the general public regarding the city's response to any emergency that happens throughout the city. So disseminating the information related to evacuation routes, instructions related to emergencies, urban fires, earthquakes, and those responses would come from that department.
Okay, understood. I mentioned earlier about an exercise. We spoke of that briefly about exercises. We're getting to the point where climate change is affecting our Earth, so we don't know what's going to happen. So and I'm sure the commissioners would agree, we just want to make sure that our community is prepared for any disasters that may occur.
Yeah.
I understand about the plan, this general plan that's happening right here. However, once we approve it, it needs to go to another step needs to happen. So where is that next step, and who's responsible for that next step?
So just to make sure that we're clear. So as mentioned before, the safety element is a component of the general plan, and so it's a much higher level document that basically kind of is a broad brush stroke of any sort of mitigation that would be required in the city. The local hazard mitigation plan is a more, as Ethan mentioned, a more detailed document that is facilitated through the Office of Emergency Services and provides direct instruction and response to an emergency situation that would happen throughout the city. So your adoption or your recommendation to the city council of the safety element is more of a planning function, whereas the city council's approval of the hazard mitigation plan is more of a function of the actual reality and the plan and the detailed plan that the city would engage in should, Lord forbid, such a disastrous event take place, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Okay.
I'm sure that our commissioners have some other questions because I see them writing. So I'm going to open up for a few more questions, and then we're going to see if we can close it out. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Patrick.
I haven't any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Rice.
I'll hold it for a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Trail.
I have no more questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw Williams?
No further questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there a motion, please?
Chairman,
Yes.
it just needs to be opened up for public comment.
I'm sorry.
I would like to thank you for your time. I appreciate every one of you guys. Thank you so much for
Okay,
tonight.
thank you very much,
Time.
appreciate it. At this time, we want to open up for any comments, anyone wishing to address this particular item for or against this particular project. You may do so at this time. Operator, can you open up the phone lines, please?
Please press pound 2 on your telephone keypad if you wish to make a comment. Pressing pound 2 will indicate that you wish to be unmuted. There are no comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. We're going to close this segment. And is there a motion on the floor, please?
Motion on the floor. Move that we affirm category exemption EACE 2022-117 and adopt a resolution recommending approval of the general plan amendment number 2022-002
Second.
with a condition? With a condition that I think we have, this condition is because I think we have a local active potential hazard that needs to have some mediation attention that's paid to it. And with the condition that we have planning staff assign someone to at least go for 2 of the live burn trainings at our burn center twice a year. During the live burn, schedule it so that you'll go and you'll actually see what's going on. We have something actively going on in the city that's a potential hazard. And I just want to make sure that we check that on a regular basis and make sure that they're operating within the CEQA or the AQMD rules and regulations. That's the condition.
Wait a minute, Ms. Wilcox, before you make a comment. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. We'll call for any questions. Ms. Wilcox, you had a question.
Just wanted to note, because of the action being taken, there are no conditions that are part of this action. However, staff has made a note to look at the CEQA document associated with the fire training facility, and we will visit the site when they are holding their trainings to
Very well.
confirm
I'll
compliance.
I'll withdraw the condition and have the motion minus the condition.
Okay, so we have a second. Are you withdrawing that condition? Commissioner Rice?
Yes, I have.
So we have to go back to the person who made the second. And who made the second?
Second with the withdrawal of his
Okay, very good.
condition.
Okay. And we want to move forward? We have a properly moved in second. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote.
Aye. Commissioner Rice?
Aye.
Commissioner Trejo?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw Williams?
Aye.
Chairman Spriggs?
Aye. Ms. Wilcox, is there any procedures?
Chairman, there's no appeal process for this. It'll automatically be forwarded to the city council for their consideration.
Thank you. Madam Secretary? And before you move on, could I make a comment? I think what's happening with this general plan, I really appreciate you guys really going into it thoroughly and looking into it and asking the questions that you ask, because it's very important that we make sure that we do the right things for our communities. And you guys did an excellent job on asking the right questions. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary.
Item 6B, a public hearing to consider zoning code amendment 2022-005, ZCA 2022-005 to modify miscellaneous regulations in Chapter 12 of the Inglewood Municipal Code related to residential accessory structures, downtown Inglewood development standard consistency, cosmetology schools, liquor store state code references, signage regulation consistency, and floor area definition citywide.
Chairman Springs and Commission, the file is present and notice has been given in the form and manner as required by law. Staff received no correspondence from the public on this item, and Senior Planner Bernard McCrumbie is present to do a short staff presentation.
Good evening, Chairman Springs and members of the commission. It's a busy night for me, huh? Over the course of day-to-day implementation of the zoning code and as part of the review of development projects, staff periodically is confronted with code provisions that are either outdated, unclear, and in some cases unnecessary. This short presentation will discuss the details of the requested code amendment that staff has identified the need for amending. The first issue is residential accessory structures. So in July 2022, the city adopted regulations for short-term rentals. In the day-to-day application of these regulations, the Housing Protection Department and the city administration has determined that there is a need to consider allowing short-term rentals within residential accessory structures. For example, rumpus rooms, recreation rooms, pool houses, etc. Now, these rec rooms contain full bathrooms, but not kitchens, or allowing these residential accessory structures to contain full bathrooms and not kitchens. Currently, the IMC has strict prohibitions against accessory structures having full bathrooms to be used for sleeping purposes, to have kitchens, and also to be considered income producing or rented out as a separate unit from the main house. Planning staff has determined that by allowing ancillary structures to be used for short-term rentals, resident property owners will have the opportunity to directly benefit from the financial gains from events that are happening throughout the city while still living full-time in their residence. Staff proposes the following changes to the IMC. Allowing accessory structures to have full bathrooms, allow accessory structures to be rented as short-term rentals, not as separate dwelling units. All right, not as separate dwelling units. I want to clarify, make sure I'm clear on that. And allowing accessory structures to be used for sleeping purposes for short-term rentals, not to be rented again as a separate dwelling unit. That's a very important component. The next, Chairman, I see that look on your face. I know you're gonna have some questions for me. The next issue is related to cosmetology school, and this is one that I know is dear to the commission's heart. Cosmetology schools are considered currently a trade school under the IMC, and they require a special use permit approval. In recent years, the Planning Division had received a number of cosmetology school applications, and of 3 specifically, 2 were approved and 1 application was withdrawn. And one of the 2 that were approved has opened this year. It opened in January 2022, 240 North Market. The Planning Commission, as a part of the SUP approvals, have implemented strict conditions that would restrict students from being able to charge for services rendered through the cosmetology school. And the reason for this was that in 2002, salons and barbershops were prohibited in the downtown area, and they're subject, as you all know, to a special use permit throughout other areas of the city. The recent applications that we received were all in the downtown area, and so these conditions were implemented in order to prohibit salons from maybe turning into de facto beauty salons under the guise of a cosmetology school. The Planning Commission directed staff to take a look at modifying the code and the business practices of these cosmetology schools to fall more in line with standard operating procedures of cosmetology schools in other cities. Based on staff's ongoing analysis, feedback and discussion from the Planning Commission, and our direction from the commission, staff is proposing to establish a definition for cosmetology school, which is not currently listed in our code. This definition will also provide a guideline or guides to how these schools will operate and provide an allowance for students to work and earn money to pay for, to offset tuition costs for their schooling throughout their time at the cosmetology schools. This also, as a part of this definition, there's also a requirement that these cosmetology schools receive state approval, as well as advertisement to the public, to the general public, to state that these are student-provided services, not teacher-provided services for a fee. So the students are the ones that would be receiving the cash for or the payment for their services rendered. The next issue is downtown development standard consistency. And so in 2016, the city adopted the Downtown Fairview Heights Transit-Oriented Development Plan. And the TOD changed some of the downtown zoning from C1 to Historic Core and Mixed Use 1 or MU1. In doing so, the general standards that would apply to outdoor dining, as well as some other special downtown development standards, were not carried over from the C1 zone to the HC and the MU1 zone. And so what we're trying to do is just provide consistency by moving those standards over in the code to be mentioned under the HC and the MU1 zones and their permitted uses and development standards in the IMC. The next issue deals with off-site liquor store sales. Currently, there is a 600-foot prohibition from any school, public playground, or nonprofit youth facility. The section that's striked out on the screen right now is a state code, and so from time to time, state codes and their sections change. And so in order to provide some consistency and also to ensure that staff is not, or the general public is not applying codes that are outdated and no longer used, we wanted to provide some specific language that particular section mentions. And so then this way, there won't be any doubt as to what types of facilities are subject to that 600-foot separation or distance requirement. And the off-site liquor sales would still require a special use permit. So really the only change that's being made in the code is that we're striking out the section, the specific section that's mentioned in the state code, and we're replacing it with these specific community centers, the Boy and Girl Scout facilities, and we included the like in the event that there's a community center that opens, a Boys and Girls Club that may not necessarily be mentioned specifically, but it falls under the umbrella. The next issue deals with gross area, our gross floor area definition. And the zoning code currently includes a definition of gross floor area that is unclear and makes reference to both a gross floor area calculation as well as a net area calculation. The distinction and why this is important is that typically we use gross floor area to determine parking requirements, okay? Our code currently as written, subtracts out non-rentable floor area, bathrooms, hallways, elevator shafts, and things of that nature, that more so would be more representative of a net floor area as opposed to the totality of the structure, which would be the gross. So in making this modification to the code, we would be clarifying the definition for gross floor area as shown on the screen, and providing a new definition for net floor area, which we will then use for calculating our parking requirements moving forward. We're almost done. The last code modification that's being proposed is just basically general signage consistency. And so again, going back to the establishment of our downtown TOD, Fairview Heights TOD plans, and now the inclusion of our Westchester Veterans and Crenshaw Imperial TOD plans, basically what we're proposing to do is to take those zones and apply and add them to our general signage regulations that would apply citywide. And so this way we're able to now to currently as in the IMC, those new zones that were created through the TOD are not listed. And so now we will be listing those signage guidelines within the IMC to provide consistency for staff and the general public. The proposed code amendment is consistent with the Inglewood General Plan and is exempt from CEQA, and a notice of exemption has been prepared stating such. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am happy to answer the many questions that I know you have at this time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That was a good report. We're going to open up questions for you. We're going to start with Commissioner Patrick.
We have had this discussion so many times. So the questions that I have, I will withhold for now, and I defer to my esteemed colleagues.
Okay. Commissioner Rice.
Yes, clarification first. With reference to residential short-term rentals, do you still have it set where you cannot have a kitchen in one of those units?
Yes.
Still no kitchens?
Still no kitchen.
Okay. And that. Outside dining, how did that impact Market Street, the zoning change?
So there was not, there technically was not an impact. Basically, with the C1 zone, we maintained the C1 zone outdoor dining standard and applied it to the HC zone along Market Street. So businesses have been able to continue to have outdoor dining. What we did was we just, with the slow removal of the C1 zone altogether, we're just now making sure that the outdoor dining and those other special development standards are outlined specifically in the new zoning designations that were created through the TOD.
That's really going to help that area.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Back to Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, that was a little concerning. It was kind of case specific, and I think it should be more generic. It looks like we're protecting a specific organ. I know you said the likes and youth clubs, but it's kind of like saying don't put any liquor around Shell Oil Company, and then anybody's like Shell Oil Company. It's kind of, I think it should be more generic in your statement there.
Yeah, we can work on modifying the language. Yeah, the intent was to be specific and related to youth facilities.
Right.
And maybe that's just what we stay with. I'm not sure. We can discuss that, but we definitely will note that and try to figure out how we can make it more.
No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Trio.
Yes, I have a question on the trade school or the beauty school. If I'm understanding you correctly, we're saying that we're going to allow students to charge for a haircut. Is that
As a part of their practicum experience. So throughout the cosmetology program, as a part of their state licensing, they're required to do a certain number of hours per trade. As a part of their practicum experience, they work on mannequins and live individuals. And so they would be able now to charge fees for services that are rendered. Now, that could be those services, or the fees could be created from the school, and a portion of those fees could go be applied towards their tuition, whatever the case may be. But that is the intent, and that would allow the schools here in the city to be able to operate as standard practice with other cosmetology type of uses in other cities.
So
surrounding cities.
Beauty schools or cosmetology schools in other cities allow students to charge as a part of their
Curriculum.
their
And
curriculum. And who establishes the fees? I mean, are they going to be charging at a going rate, or is it a student rate? How do you enforce that it is the student that's cutting the hair and not the instructor stepping in, because the student may not, at that point, may not be cutting the hair the way it's supposed to be? How do you ensure or enforce that?
Yeah, well, we establish through the special use permit process for those schools that are looking to come into the city. We establish them as conditions of approval, and should they operate outside of those boundaries, then they're subject to that SUP being revoked. I think too, just with the requirement of their advertised services being student driven, so to speak, is another way that we could help to curb any of the issues. Because I understand what you're saying. What's to stop a teacher from staying open late and inviting their friends to come in and then charge for services to be rendered? Absolutely. And we've thought about that. And so that's part of the reason why we've established the definition the way that we did. We ensured that we made it clear that this is a part of their practicum experience, that they're able to meet whatever state requirements and mandates they're subjected to as a part of these schools. And we are conscious of these turning into de facto salons, and we don't want that to happen, and so we will condition them accordingly.
Well, are you saying we'll condition it, or you will be providing as a part of the application certain criteria that they must meet before they can even make the application? I think that is more of a deterrent to turning into a beauty school, or a cosmetology school. That would be more of a deterrent rather than waiting for a commissioner to put the condition in.
So just so that I'm clear, so that you're saying that as a part of this definition, or if we create additional regulations, that the state licensing, the advertisement and other sort of regulatory issues should be addressed prior to them filing for an application for a special use permit and included within their operation procedures? Or
if I want to open a cosmetology school and I go in, I know I have to apply for a special use permit with the city. I want to apply for that, and I want to know ahead of time by reading an application that will mention, or that tells me, that in order to avoid being considered a beauty salon, that I have to adhere to these standards.
Okay.
Because I think it should be part of the application process, because an applicant comes in, and maybe for whatever reason, one of us may not remember, we have to impose a condition on there that would ensure that there are student fees, or the student fees are applied a certain way. I just think they have to know ahead of time.
Yeah, when applicants submit an application for cosmetology school, one of the items we'd be looking for is their operational procedures, and we'd be looking for every component of our definition mentioned, and it would carry forward into conditions of approval. So they wouldn't move forward unless we saw that they were planning to comply with everything in the code.
Okay, but I don't see anything in there about fees specifically.
It's mentioned in the definition of the cosmetology school.
Okay, can you point it out to me? Because maybe I'm reading through it very fast and I don't see anything about fees. It just says,
It says practicum experience may include both student work conducted on mannequins as well as student work on paying customers by appointment or walk-in.
okay, but on paying customers, it kind of leaves it open. It doesn't limit, or doesn't provide a scale for student fees or what they charge if a student is, I mean, I can read that and say student work on paying customers. I mean, the student work could be, okay, they're washing the hair and somebody comes in and they're ready to get their hair cut and the instructor takes over because it's a paying customer.
So would
I think it has to be clarified.
I think one of the things that, in order for that instructor to be able to take over, then they'd have to have their cosmetology license displayed.
Well,
They'd have to have that be a violation. If you have to display your cosmetology license, that would end up being a violation. That's kind of where my code enforcement division comes in. There'd be some complaint that would be lodged. 'Cause obviously, we're not going to be there watching everything that they do.
Well, I
but-
understand that, but I think that paying customers is a misnomer. I think you have to maybe put in paying customers, paying students on a student fee schedule or something like that. It's too open.
would you prefer something along the lines of for paying customers subject to industry standard for services?
Well,
or
what's the industry standard for a student? I mean, what do other cities charge? How do they charge?
Well,
I
the
can go
cities
to a
don't
hair-
charge. So the
the
charges
cities don't
come
charge.
from, just so we're clear, cities don't charge.
No,
This is
not
coming,
city.
this is coming from the school, right? And and I've been in those before. You're not paying the going rate. You're with a student. So the point of you going there is that you don't pay the going rate, right? You're helping a student out, you're also saving some money in your pocket. So I think Mindy has some language that may help us, and then we can determine whether or not that works for what your concern is.
Yeah, I think it has to be clarified. It has to be more specific.
So one thing that we've also included in the definition is that services advertised to the public shall be clearly described as student-provided services.
Student-provided services, but what's the fee? I mean, I can go into a hair salon like I do on a fairly regular basis, and I know I'm going to pay X amount of money to get my hair cut. If a person goes into a cosmetology school, then I think that there should be a schedule, much like in when you get your nails done. You know, they provide all of this list of fees that you're going to pay for either a manicure or a gel manicure or a pedicure. They provide a list.
So we could add language to say, shall be clearly described as students-provided services in conformance with the school schedule of student fees, student service fees, something along those lines. So the school will be required to provide a list of all their services. And based on that, code enforcement and whoever may be reviewing it would be able to determine if it's student rates or not.
Yeah, I think that that's better, that you clearly indicate what the student rates are, because, I mean, you know, we can always say, oh, well, they're not going to do that, but we've been in a situation where a person will promise something, then they come back a few months later and do something else. But if it's clearly spelled out, then it is definitely a cosmetology school paying customers know that they're paying a student rate. So along those lines, as long as they're in there, then I don't have an issue with
Yeah,
that.
and I think our only concern was not putting a specific rate in the code, because then you got to change the code every time the rate
Yeah, well, no,
changes. So
that-
I think that fee schedule, and we'll require them to give that to us for your
Exactly.
consideration when it becomes before you for a special use
Right,
permit. So you'll
because-
have it.
Yeah, because if other schools are allowing students to charge, and I like the idea that whatever they earn, could go toward their tuition. I mean, that's up to them, but obviously there are schools out there that allow students, or they charge customers for the students to cut their hair. So it should just be clearly spelled out. That's my concern, is that if it's not clearly spelled out, I know people will take advantage of it. If it's clearly spelled out, then they will adhere to it, because they don't want to get their special use permit revoked. They've spent all this money, so I'm happy with that then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shaw Williams?
I just have more of a comment concerning the cosmetology schools, which I was happy to read about, because my experience during the time I was in college, I would often go to the cosmetology schools and get my hair done, and trust and believe the cost was significantly less than what I would pay at a beauty salon. So I was happy to hear about that. And as well as when a student was doing my hair, there would be times when the instructors would be walking around and they would shadow the student. And if the student was doing something that they felt was not right, they would stop them and show them on my hair or another person's hair to correct them so that they would do it properly going forward. So I'm very comfortable with whatever they charge. Most people who utilize the cosmetology schools already know that they're not going to pay what they would pay at a beauty salon. And I recall, just in the top of my head, I believe I paid $18 for just a press and curl, which anywhere else I would pay $55 to $65. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I do have some questions, and my questions are in regards to the dwelling units. I want to make sure that I'm clear, or so I can understand exactly what's written, because I see something up here and I'm reading something down here are completely different. For an example, we're looking at the allowing accessibility, accessory structures to have full bathrooms. And then you're saying that the rentals is going to be a short-term rentals, not as dwelling units. So we're looking at, if it's a short-term rental, we're looking at not a person to come and rent for any long length of time. And then it indicates that the short-term is not going to be a sleeping unit, not the dwelling unit. It's not going to be a sleeping unit.
Yeah, so
It
it's
says-
allowing it to be used now for sleeping purposes. Currently, accessory structures are not allowed. There's a strict prohibition for them to be used for sleeping purposes. So, which our code right now allows a half bath in accessory structures, no kitchen, and they cannot be used or for someone to sleep in. And so we, in an effort to try to provide more flexibility for short-term rentals, we're going to be amending our code. And just so that you know, all of our accessory structures, rumpus rooms, pool rooms, things of that nature, are covenant restricted. So when we approve them right now to date, when we approve them, unless it's an ADU, ADUs require covenants as well, but we require a covenant that says that they will not be used for sleeping purposes or income producing. And that's a recorded document on the property.
So an ADU does, ADU, you're getting their sleeping units, they have kitchens.
Correct.
But
But cannot be used as short-term rentals.
It cannot be used as short-term rentals.
And that's a restriction that's also
So
covenant.
who's monitoring the short-term rentals? Who's monitoring that?
Yeah, housing.
And when they being built, are we looking at the size, the height, the width, things of that nature? Because I didn't see that in here.
Yes, so all of our accessory structures would have to meet development standards, and they come through the planning department if it's a new residential accessory structure. A lot of what we're dealing with through housing protections or the short-term rental department are existing permitted accessory structures that the owners would like to use as short-term rentals. So that's where what's become kind of the catalyst behind this code amendment.
Okay, the state of California right now are adamant about ADUs. They want ADUs, but we're doing something completely different.
No, we still we get a number of ADU applications. What's happening though is that we're not allowing ADUs to be used as short-term rentals. So the state is allowing these ADUs in an effort to help to curb the housing crisis. And so the part of the battle that's being fought is a lot of the homeowners would like to use their ADUs as short-term rentals. And the city of Inglewood currently is not allowing that. But we are looking to allow the property owner who has a pool house who hasn't decided to convert their pool house into an ADU, which they would be able to under certain conditions from the state, they wanted to maintain it as a pool house and not have a long-term tenant. And so this will now allow them the flexibility to be able to use it as a short-term rental as opposed to having a long-term tenant.
Okay, understood. I think Commissioner Rice has another question. Am I correct in saying that?
I had a light comment
Oh, comment.
with reference to trade schools. Cosmetology, one in which I have quite a bit of experience with.
Mike,
Can't hear you.
Cosmetology, one in which I have quite a bit of experience with, but trade schools in general, SCROC had a lot of them when I was coming up as a kid, and I went through wood shop, electronics, metal, automotive, even with Morningside High School. The high schools had a lot of that going on. And there are a lot of kids that can go to the trade schools that may not necessarily continue and go on through academia of college and go into the corporate world, but they can come out with certifications in trade schools and they can still earn a living wage, $80,000, $120,000 a year, just coming out of trade school. What happens in cosmetology schools, the students can work on clients and pay that towards their tuitions. The tuitions in cosmetology schools range from $15,000 to $18,000 for the course. You can do your 1,600 hours, but once you finish your 1,600 hours, you don't get a certificate if you have not paid all of your fees. So you basically wasted all your time going through school and you're making payments on a loan. If you don't have it paid off, you can't make any money once you get out of school. You graduate with no certificate, which means you can't get a license. So the benefit of being able to have a large portion of these funds that clients are paying in go towards paying the students' education, many of the students come out debt-free. By the time they finish their 1,600 hours, if they're cosmetologists, or 15 as a barber, which recently has changed, by the way, with the state. I think it's down to 1,800. They've reduced it. But they will take these funds and pay off their tuition. They can go right into the workforce. Those are folks that we don't have to see on the criminal side of town, side of Inglewood, being more case specific. Because if you go into trade school and you potentially get yourself a skill, you can find other ways to make income as opposed to doing things in a negative way. So I think we need trade schools. We need more than just cosmetology schools. We need all the ones that I took many years ago: welding, woodwork, auto mechanics. And on the note of an instructor stepping in, I mean, it's no more than an instructor stepping in as he's giving you driver training. I mean, for God's sake, if someone's veering off the road, I want the instructor to step in.
Right.
Cosmetology, someone's damaging my hair, I want the instructor to step in. They're working on an hourly wage, the instructors. They're an employee. They're not making additional money by assisting a student no more than a driver trainer is grabbing the steering wheel or pumping the brakes, assisting a student to be correct on the road. I applaud the city of Inglewood for making this move towards loosening the restraints on students going to cosmetology schools, and I hope this is just the start of many more to come to help students out. Thank you very much.
I have no other questions. I don't think there's any other questions from any of the commissioners. Excellent job, good questions, you guys. And right now, if the applicant, there is none. All right, I'm glad of that. Okay, so is there a motion on the floor? No, we're going to open it up. No motion yet. Open it up. Operator, can you open up the phone lines? Anyone wishing to address this particular project, you may do so at this time. Please open up the phone lines, operator.
Please press pound 2 on your telephone keypad to make a comment. There are no comments at this time.
Thank you. We're going to close this segment. And is there a motion on the floor, please?
I move that we affirm categorical exemption EACE 2022-117 with the recommended change on the paying customers for cosmetology school, which again, I think is a good idea. Perhaps you guys are thinking that I don't think it's a good idea, but it is. I just want to make sure we're clear. Again, I move that we affirm categorical exemption EACE 2022-117 with a recommended addition on the wording and adopt a resolution recommending City Council adoption of GPA 2022-002 with the recommended change to some language on cosmetology school.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. We're going to call for any questions. Hearing none, we'll call for a vote.
Commissioner Patrick,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice,
Aye.
Commissioner Trejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw Williams,
Aye.
Chairman Springs.
Aye. Ms. Wilcox, is there?
Chairman, there's no appeal process. This item will automatically move on to the City Council for their consideration.
Thank you. Okay, item number 7B. Well, Kumba, thank you very much, man. Good job.
Thank you.
Non-public hearing. Item 7B. A non-public hearing to consider final track map number 80314-01, FTM 80314-01, to finalize the subdivision of approximately 281.6 acres of the 298-acre Hollywood Park Specific Plan Zone property at 1050 South Prairie Avenue.
Chairman Springs and Commission, the file is present and notice has been given in the form and manner as required by law. Staff received no correspondence from the public on this item. There's no staff presentation, but staff is available for any questions you may have on the final tract map.
Okay. I want to open up for any, we read it. Open up any questions in regards to this. We start off with Commissioner Patrick.
I did read it. I found it very interesting. I haven't any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Rice.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Trejo.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Shaw Williams.
I have no questions.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
I have no questions. So can we get a A motion on this?
Motion. I move that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution of FTM 80314-01, recommending approval of FTM 80314-01 to the mayor and city council, subject to 4 conditions. 4 or 3? I believe it was 4.
It
Was
is.
it changed to 4? Yes.
Correct.
4 conditions.
Second.
It has been properly moved in second. We'll call for any questions. Hearing none, we'll call for a vote.
Commissioner Patrick,
Aye.
Commissioner Rice,
Aye.
Commissioner Trejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw Williams,
Aye.
Chairman Spriggs.
Aye. Ms. Wilcox?
Yes, Chairman. This item has no appeal process. It will automatically move on to the city council for their consideration.
Okay, thank you. Public comments. Anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission on any matters within the jurisdiction of the city may do so at this time. Operator, can you open up the phone lines?
Please press pound 2 if you wish to make a comment. Let's go to our first comment. Your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Marlene Nations, Chief Legal Officer for Hollywood Park. And first, I want to thank you for taking the time for considering our plan tonight, our first track map, and passing it. And I also want to bring to your attention the wonderful work that your staff did working with us to bring, as you can see, what is a very difficult and complicated map to the point that it's now in front of you. It's been a pleasure working with them, and they've been super helpful with giving us great comments and great feedback. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Not at this moment.
Okay, we're going to close this segment, and we're going to open up for commissioners' initiatives. We're going to start off with Commissioner Patrick.
No comment on Popeyes. I'd like to wish all of you and thank all of you for all the help that you've given us this past year. I'd like to say happy holidays to everyone. I look forward to sharing our holiday festivities with you on the 14th. Thank you again.
Commissioner Rice.
I don't know how many of you were able to attend the tree lighting ceremony, but I think this year it was probably the very best we've ever had. And thank you, staff, and everyone who worked on that. Wish everyone a very happy holiday. I'll see you next year.
Commissioner Trio.
I want to also thank the staff. You guys are absolutely wonderful, providing information when repeatedly asked and requesting clarification. I do appreciate it a lot. You've done a lot for the city and for the commission. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. And I too look forward to the get-together on the 14th. Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw Williams.
I also like to thank the staff. You guys are awesome. I personally want to thank Evangeline for dropping off my business cards at my home. Thank you so much. And I want to wish everyone happy holidays, and I'm looking forward to our holiday party next week. I'm hoping to go to 2. Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. I do have a couple of items that I'd like to discuss with staff. First of all, I want to say Merry Christmas to everyone. We have to remember why we're here and who should we be acknowledging. I think sometimes we miss what we should be actually doing. I was told by my pastor, do not be afraid to say what's really the truth. And the truth is Jesus Christ. So I'm not afraid to say it.
Amen.
I want to hit on a couple of things, and one would be electric vehicles and having some way that not only staff, but some of our police officers and other people that work for the city have an opportunity to charge up their vehicles. We don't have enough charging stations here in the city, especially in our structure, and I'd like to know if there's a way that we could add some more electric vehicle plug-ins or charging for the electric vehicles that we have. That's number one. Number two would be, I didn't go to the lighting ceremony, but I was driving down the street and I saw all these people and everybody had wraps on. So I said, I'm not going to get out of my car because it looks too cold. So I decided to stay in my car and stay across the street in my warm vehicle. But I looked at the festivities and it looked like it was wonderful. So I want to thank the staff for actually putting that together. And the mayor is actually doing a fantastic job. I want to make a comment in regards to the parties that are going to come up, where the location that we're going to be meeting, and where we're going to take our food, things of that nature, and the academy, the Commissioners Academy. I want to make a comment on that. How's that going to work for us? I know I had something else in my brain, but it's not coming out right now. But I'm going to want you to answer it and then it'll come back to me.
Sure. I'll take a stab at most of those. So in terms of the holiday party, those details will be sent out, I'm anticipating on Monday, in terms of logistics, where, when, and all of that. In terms of the League of California Cities Planning Commissioner Academy, we just received the new information on that. It's going to be held in late March, and so we'll be sending information about that as well. I'm hoping by the end of next week. But at a minimum, we will send you the details of when it's supposed to occur, and so you can mark that on your calendar. And then in terms of the EV charging facilities, I know the Public Works Department is working to roll out those facilities. There's a lot of grant funds coming available for that purpose. And I know the city is taking advantage of that in various ways, both the city and then also within the private sector. There's a big effort to install more EV charging stations.
Okay. And lastly, I remembered. You know, I was on Market Street, and Market Street right now is becoming you're getting a lot of traffic on Market Street and a lot of foot traffic as well. We have several eateries on Market Street, and I just can't wait until it really opens up and we get this monorail coming down Market Street. But one of the eateries that I had gone to and I ran into Councilman Dotson and his family there was the Soul Food Shack. And ladies and gentlemen, you have to go. It was fantastic. The service was awesome. The ambiance was fantastic. And the food was really off the chain. It was really good, really delicious. So I'm encouraging, if you live here in the city, even if you don't live here in the city, I think you should concentrate on some of the things that the city has to offer. They have a wonderful coffee shop on Market Street as well. So you should, if you're a coffee drinker, you can always go in there. They have Wi-Fi, so you can actually have some of your meetings, staff, in the coffee shop because they have Wi-Fi there. So it's a good place to have your meetings, and they have a great cup of coffee. And if you want to go and listen to some good jazz, you can go to the Miracle Theater, and they have great jazz. Matter of fact, Mr. Jackson promised me that we were going to go together, and I just went by myself. I couldn't wait on him, and they had a good jazz group that was there, and it's very, very good. And it's on Thursdays. And after you get through with the jazz, you can go across the street at the Nile and get yourself a great meal. So we have a lot of things here in Inglewood. I encourage everybody to go out, discover the things that we have here on Market Street. You'll really, really like it. And that's my comments. You guys have a great holiday, great Christmas. I love you all. And that's one of the great commandments that Jesus put out, was to love. And I want to put that out to you guys. I love you.
funny.
Meeting is adjourned.